afternoon, everyone. My name is Chris Forrester, and I'm here to look after the NDS Perspective panels, where we bring together a group of experts to study and talk about challenges and problems facing the industry. This afternoon session, multi-platform, we'll get into in a moment. But let me first introduce our guests. On the extreme left-hand side, Nigel Smith, Senior Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer at NDS. Next to him is an empty space for Tom Morod. Tom is running late, and we hope he'll join us, and we'll slip him in there. In the center here, Sam Blackman, Chief Executive Officer, Chairman and Co-founder of Elemental, and we'll find out a little more about Elemental in a moment. And on my right side, Philip Poulidis, forgive me for Poulidis for mispronouncing, founder, president, and CEO at Morega. Sam, let me come back to you. Tell the audience what Elemental is about.
Well, thanks very much, Chris. Elemental is one of the leading provider of multi-screen solutions for video processing. We take advantage of these very, very powerful processors called the GPU to get very high density and quality for multi-screen delivery. Our customers are folks like Comcast in the United States, which uses Elemental to power their Xfinity application, ABC News for iPad applications, and a variety of other customers that leverage Elemental technology for both live and on-demand video processing.
Now, let me ask the same question of you, please, Philip. Tell our audience what Morega is about.
Thank you, Chris. Morega is all about multi-screen video delivery. We provide an end-to-end solution for managing video across different platforms. We believe in three-screen media, and that's what we offer. Our target customers are TV operators and consumer electronics vendors looking at bringing three-screen experience to their products and services.
And give me a feel for who your clients are, Philip. Who are you serving as your principal customer? Customers.
We're going to be naming our first customers coming up here in a few weeks.
Okay, right.
So I can't disclose that just yet, but
okay,
it's a large satellite TV operator using our solutions for multi-screen delivery of their set-top box DVR content across multiple platforms, streaming and side-loading of premium content across different devices.
That's a good clue. That's a good clue. Sam, who is buying your service?
We have several disclosed customers in the United States. I mentioned Comcast, ABC News, CBS Interactive, World Wrestling Entertainment, and several others. In the United Kingdom and Europe overall, we just opened an office in the first quarter of this year, and we have customers like WRN Broadcast, TF1, Delta Tray, VMMA, Eurosport, and several others.
Oh, that sounds interesting. Now, Nigel, I'll come back to you in a second, but let's get a feel from these two how they see the supply of content coming into the home, how they see the exchanging of content throughout the home and onto portable devices, how you see that evolving. Philip?
Right, so what you just described has many challenges inherent within those use cases. Distribution of video content across multiple platforms, of course, involves ensuring that the content can play on the target devices, ensuring the formats are compatible, the containers, the security, the DRM, because users have come to expect to get their content on multiple devices, and they don't want to know how it's done, they just want to know that it works. So what you just described is great in theory, but in practice involves many different challenges, and I think we're going to cover some of those here today.
Absolutely. Sam, you're, if you like, a professional more than a consumer client portfolio, but what challenges are they giving you to solve?
Well, the workflow just changes dramatically as you go from a managed service delivery to an over-the-top delivery. The authentication paradigm is different. The content management system is completely different. The types of video you have to create, instead of just generating one stream of video, you have to create what's called adaptive bitrate streams. So for a given type of delivery, say to an Apple iPad or to an Android tablet or to a mobile device by Google, we have to create many different streams. So instead of just one MPEG-2 stream to a set-top box, Elemental often creates 20 to 30 streams per input stream or per input video on demand asset. So the amount of processing power required to generate those many, many streams is enormous relative to conventional satellite or cable delivery.
Nigel, let me come to you. You are the top of the tree in handling, in the coping with the massive amount of stuff coming into a home, and you've got 101 clients expecting you to solve these problems in terms of distribution within the home and to portable devices. What sort of challenges does that represent, and how are you solving them?
Well, just to, is my microphone working?
Yeah, I can hear you.
There's, we had an interesting debate in NDS some time ago in terms of things like all of the CE devices that you want to use to view content. And one of the questions was, do we actually need to bother transcoding in the first place? Surely the real estate on these devices is going to increase so that you can actually put broadcast content directly onto these devices and that you don't need to transcode. But we found the reality is completely different in the sense that you do need to prepare the content for the different devices before it goes onto the device, and each device is slightly different in its own way. The two reasons we felt that, one was that just the size of the file, just moving it onto the device, would use up all the storage of the device. If you have a few hours of content onto the current generation iPad, for example, that's it. There's not much else you can do. And secondly, if you are moving the content from your broadband or from your set-top box onto the device, that's a heck of a load of data you've got to put over the network. And the network is going to be hung up with doing that and take a long time to do that. So the idea is that you transcode the content for the device that is going to aim to, and this is why we're working with partners like Morega and Elemental to be able to do that. Now, within NDS, we don't sort of have a decision on whether it's going to happen at the head end or whether it's going to happen in the set-top box. We believe actually it's going to happen in both places. So this is why we need to partner with specialists who provide that level of control over the content at both the head end and on the set-top box side of things.
Now, let me pose a challenging question. And I consider myself technologically reasonably savvy. Last week, a well-known British cable company swapped out a modem. It brought my system down, and it took hours to solve the problem.
I'm amazed that happened to such a virgin technologist like yourself, Chris.
Yes, 3 guys came in, I called them Huey, Dewey, and Louie, and none of them could sort it out. So my question, and it's not designed to knock that well-known cable company, because it could happen to anyone, but my question is basically, is this a dream of distributing content around a home and to portable devices in a consumer environment a reality? Is it going to happen? Let's come to you, Philip.
So I've spent a lot of time in standards bodies dealing with that question. UPnP, DLNA. The dream is reality, but the experience is really not there yet. The user experience is not entirely seamless, especially when you're dealing with premium content and making it compatible across multiple devices. And you have to deal with security across those different platforms as well. A user doesn't want to have to think of whether they have the rights to view something on one device but not the other. They just want it to work. They don't want to have to worry about whether a container format is proper for one device but not for another. DLNA, UPnP, they do a great job of device discovery, content discovery. But when it comes down to format incompatibility, that's still a very, very big problem between devices. And so it's not a dream. Technically, all these things can be solved. We're solving those today. I'm sure Elemental is as well, and NDS. But when it comes down to reality in the consumer space, you need a little more control over the end-to-end experience rather than just throwing it to standards and hoping that they're going to solve all these problems.
And a question to all three of you. Again, staying in the consumer environment, do consumers want this degree? Now, if I'm asked, do you want it, I'll tick the box. But what's the reality? Do we really need this degree of flexibility in how we handle and exchange content? Nigel, what's your sense?
Well, we're finding that's the case. I mean, if you look at some of the more advanced operators like Sky in the UK and the success of their Sky Go application and the amount of downloads they've had since they launched Sky Go in, I think, the early part of August, has been phenomenal. So the fact that people are downloading it, not just their iPads but their mobile phones and everything, mean that people do want to be able to consume content on these devices. I've always had this theory that the reason that TV viewing is going up every year is because the content is getting better and people want to see more of it. But it's going to hit a threshold, which is just the amount of time you're going to be in your lounge.
Yeah, 24 hours a day, that's all we have.
I mean, sometimes you have to sleep, sometimes you have to go to work, you know, so there's an extra 2 hours a day where you can consume content traveling to and from work. Hopefully you're not driving, but in the train or on the bus. And this is where having the content ready to go and available on your device becomes really important.
Sam, address the storage problems that we're all beginning to suffer from. Boxes can only get so large. Servers in a home can only get so large. Is the cloud the solution? Is enhanced storage at a cable head end with your cable clients? Is that the solution? How do you see that challenge evolving?
Right. Well, I can primarily speak for the United States, where a lot of our deployments are, and kind of going to your question of how many consumers really want this multi-screen experience. When our customers have launched new applications that allow consumers to get their content on the iPad or on their Android phone or what have you, the demand is literally incredible. The ABC News app that's powered by Elemental, that was the #1 app on the iTunes Store. You know, within 2 days of release. HBO released an app that also went to #1 on the iTunes Store very, very quickly. You know, these are driving demand for these devices, this kind of media.
It's consumer pull.
This consumer pull. And going to your question just now, these are all streaming-based technology. So on none of these types of devices are you giving an entire, 5 gigabyte file of the latest version of Game of Thrones, which is a popular show in the United States. You're streaming it and switching bit rates between whatever your network connection can support at any given time. So the devices are very, very rarely storing any amount of end content other than the last few segments that were delivered.
Philip, do you have a comment?
I do want to comment on that. Although I do believe there's a demand for streaming, I still think that although there haven't been too many commercial applications of downloadable video, but I still believe that people want to feel that they can have a little more control over the video they're consuming, whether they want to watch it offline on an airplane or give it to the kids in the backseat of the car without using up their 4G data plan. I still believe there's a market for content sideloading or downloading to mobile devices. Of course, with all the protections and mechanisms in place to ensure that that content remains protected across all the different platforms and expires when it needs to expire. But I think those two will coexist. There will be applications where you'll have streaming for sports, for on-demand content. I think there will be cases where users will want to archive their own content on their portable devices and take that with them, similar to an iTunes model.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with that to some degree. One initiative that seems to be getting a lot of traction in the United States right now is the Ultraviolet initiative with DECE. If you look at the studios and content providers and distributors that have signed on with DECE, it's getting a lot of traction, and that enables this kind of downloadable, sideloadable content. You buy a movie from Warner Brothers or Sony or whoever it is, and you can watch it on any type of device with a direct download. So I agree with these.
Nigel, one of the topics that's perhaps not hot, but it's always discussed at sessions like this, in the mainstream conference and throughout this building, the question of standards. Everyone says the same thing. We want common standards, we want interoperable standards, we want standards that we can work with. What sort of a challenge and a headache are these multiple standards that you've got to cope with at the sharp end?
Yeah, well, we're all for standards, and we support loads of them. That's the trouble. There's so many standards out there, and some win, some lose. But you have to put the effort in to be able to maintain support for all of these different standards. And for instance, you mentioned DECE or DCE and ultraviolet. We're a member of that consortium as well. And others, and that's the thing. It's working out which ones are going to work and which ones aren't going to work. I think actually holds back some innovation, because you actually have to, instead of moving forward very quickly, you have to move forward a little step and then make sure everything's compatible with everything else that's going along as well. So, but in the history of technology, we've never been able to sort this out. So I don't think that's going to change. I think it's going to be a problem that's going to exist for quite some time. But I think the only one that I can look at that's worked really well was the DVB project.
That's true.
GSM as well.
Yep.
So there are some major successes of where this does work, and I think that if we could get into that sort of environment where we had a DVB sort of approach to how we move content around, it would solve a lot of issues and make innovation happen faster.
Philip, do you face the same problems? And how can you not necessarily reduce the number of licenses you're going to have to pay, because it's got to be funded, but how do you solve that equation?
It's not so much solving it, it's more just being able to deal with it effectively, I think. Standards are great because they do promote consistency across platforms, consistency across different regions, and ultimately the consumer benefits from that. At least that's the vision of most standards. But I'm going to go back to something I said earlier, where I think augmenting standards with some proprietary mechanisms to enhance the user experience is ultimately I think the answer to solving some of the key issues that emerge. Even with underlying standards providing a good base, a good foundation, having those extra elements on top of that to ensure that you can offer a seamless experience across all different platforms. I think that's what vendors like ourselves are going to have to do, while sticking to standards at a fundamental, foundational level.
And is it the role of the studios, the content owners? Is it the role of the broadcaster, the pay TV operator? Who polices this? Who ensures that that fair rules are going to apply?
I think history has proven that it's not any single entity that can enforce that, and if they try, it ends up failing in the end. Won't mention any names, but we all know who the big powerhouses are in the software industry that have tried to drive certain standards, and it just never ended up working out that way. I think it ultimately has to be a collaborative approach with multiple players in the industry across the value chain. Really, that's the only way that could make it work.
Sam, do you share that view?
Yeah, I'd say if anything, the lack of standardization is getting worse. That's the reason Elemental needs to create 40 or 50 outputs for supporting a few different types of devices. And then when you add in DRM and multi-channel audio, it just, it becomes this exponential challenge to support all the different devices that are out there. I guess the other thing you add on there is Adobe, Microsoft, Apple, Google, all pushing different ways of delivering video to these devices. The winner-take-all way that technology tends to play out means that they are all very motivated to try to make their standard win, because eventually it will sort out and there will be a dominant standard, but they're all going to keep fighting until that happens. So I don't see it slowing down from a standards competition anytime soon.
Nigel, I don't think you're going to go out of business tomorrow.
No, I think its complexity is increasing, that's for sure. And but it is the challenge as a system integrator. What we have to do is we have to hide all of the complexity that Philip and Sam are creating for us upstream.
You're welcome.
And thank you. And then when it comes to a consumer, what they want to do is they go out to a shop, they buy a phone, they click into their platform operator's login.
It works.
And they're watching video.
Sure.
And that's where the system integration part of it, where we simplify the complexity that's sitting behind all of this. And hopefully, over time, as the standards shake out, then it means that each time we take a step forward in functionality, we don't have to regress that function across a lot of different devices, and then we can start innovating a lot faster.
Gentlemen, I was given the wind-up signal 5 minutes ago. You've more than satisfied your brief. We could have gone on talking for another 30 minutes, but thank you very much. Nigel, of course, without exception, Sam Blackman and Philip Poulidis, thank you very much for this, for an excellent panel. Thank you, gents.
Thank you, Chris.